Hi everyone, this is Nicolas REMY from the Underwater Club. In this video I'm going to introduce the Retra Flash Pro X, and I want to thank Retra for being our sponsor here. As a matter of fact, many of my award-winning underwater photos have been taken with one or two Retra Flash Pro strobes, and I am now going to explain the 7 reasons why these strobes have been my main underwater strobes for the past 2 years. First of all, the Retra Flash Pro has a fantastic quality of light, and what I mean by that is 3 things. First, the light beam is very wide. It is so wide that I managed to illuminate a 3 meters long grayness shark with just one strobe, one Retra Flash Pro, positioned above my housing. Second, the light fall off from the center of the beam is very smooth. Now, you should know that all underwater strobes are brighter in the middle of their beam, but what I'm saying is there is no visible hotspot with the Retra Flash Pro, and that's very important for wide-angle photography when you try to evenly, smoothly illuminate a wide scene. This is also helpful when you're working with very reflective subjects and you want to take care not to overexpose them. Now, the third factor which gives a good quality of light to the Retra Flash Pro is its color temperature. Out of the box, it is slightly warmer than daylight, but by fitting the optional wide-angle diffuser, you can change its color temperature to a pretty warm 4400 kelvins, which is very good at making your blue water backgrounds more vibrant, more saturated. The second thing I love about my Retra Flash Pro is its power. Because yes, it doesn't only have a very wide beam, it also shines very bright. I actually made a test. Look at this photo. This is a dive site we have here in Sydney called The Apartments. It's called like that because of these very large rock formations which have the size of a small building. And yet, I've been able to illuminate almost the whole thing using my 2 Retra Flash Pros. You can see we have some orange color coming back from a distance. This was shot with a fisheye lens, so I reckon these orange sponges are about 2 meters, 6 feet away from me, and yet I have had sufficient power to be able to revive their colors. Having all that power is great for wide-angle scenes, but it's also useful for macro when you're doing some snooting, because the snoot is going to cut a lot of the strobe's light. I do a lot of snooting myself, but I have never felt short of strobe power, even if I'm working under bright daylight conditions. This particular photo has been taken in 4 meters, 12 feet of depth, at midday, on a sunny day, and yet the strobe had no problem overpowering the ambient sunlight. As an underwater photographer, there are many scenarios where you will want to change the appearance of your strobe beam. It can be to improve the colors, the texture, help the subject stand out, or just to reduce backscatter. So really, the more options you have, the more creative you can be. Well, one thing I love about my Retra Flash Pro is that it's compatible with every single lighting accessory that Retra has released so far. And that's because they've always kept the same bayonet mount for every strobe that they have released. Let me show you some of the gadgets that I use. Let's start with diffusers. For wide-angle photography, most of the time I have these warm diffusers here, and they're fantastic for blue water. I mean, they're perfect when I get that sort of conditions. But what if I get that sort of water instead? Well, that's no good, because my warm diffusers have made the green water sort of yellowish. I think that yellow-green doesn't look very good, but that's alright, because those diffusers are very easy to take off underwater. And if I want to make my green water more green, more vibrant, I can fit these cold diffusers. As an artist, I prefer my green water to look this way. You can also make your strobe beam tighter when you want to illuminate only some of the elements of the scene or just to reduce backscatter. The most extreme way to do it is by using a snoot, which really cuts down the beam, making it very narrow. And you can make that beam even narrower, even tighter by using some of these reduction masks. This is really good at creating a spotlight effect around a small subject, but you may also use a snoot just to create a black background behind a macro subject. One last thing on snooting with the Retra Flash Pro, I really like that the pilot light is located at the center of the strobe, because that means it's going to shine at the center of the snoot as well, which makes it very practical to help position the snoot precisely where you want the light to fall. Now, for bigger subjects, a snoot might be too small, but Retra has a range of rings which you can stack up to adjust the size of the light beam. Starting with these reduction rings, which will cut down the shape of the light beam just a little bit. If that's not enough, you can add some macro rings. You push them in, and you've got a tighter beam. And if again that's not enough, you've got the super macro rings here. Again, you push them in, and that cuts the light beam even more. You can use that sort of rings to create a spotlight effect on a wide-angle scene. But my favorite use is for inward lighting, when I want the light to reach only the foreground and not illuminate the distracting background. This is what I did here, and that sea dragon, being about 30 cm, about 1 foot long, is definitely too big for this to work with a Snoot. Finally, Retra has reflectors, which you push into the reduction rings, similar to the macro rings, but their purpose is very different. They concentrate the strobe light, meaning they make the light beam tighter, but they also make it brighter. This is great for portraits of shy subjects like these boxfish, which are always on the move. You're shooting them from a distance with a long macro lens, but you're also closing down the aperture because you want to make sure they're sharp. All this is challenging for the strobes because you need to throw sufficient light at a distance. Well, the Retra Flash Pro is already quite powerful from starters, but these reflectors make it 2 times brighter. In the previous video, I have shown you some of the many lighting accessories which are compatible with the Retra Flash Pro. Now the great thing is, they are super easy to swap underwater for 3 reasons. First, they come with some little cords here, which makes it easy to clip them onto your BCD's D-rings and carry them during the dive. Most of the time I have 1 or 2 snoots and sometimes reduction rings clipped onto my BCD. Yes, I look like an underwater Christmas tree, but having these accessories with me opens up my creative options underwater. Secondly, all these accessories are slightly negatively buoyant. So when I'm diving on sand and I have a few accessories to swap around, I sometimes put everything on the seafloor, I pick the one I need, take my photos, come back, pick another one, try something else, and at the end, I come back to pick everything when I'm finished, and I know my stuff will still be there waiting for me, not drifting on the surface. The last thing I really like about these lighting accessories is that they all have a similar buoyancy underwater. Meaning, when I swap between this diffuser and this snoot, it's not going to imbalance my rig too much, meaning I will still be comfortable taking underwater photos. Whenever you open a strobe to change its batteries, you have to pay a lot of attention, you have to take care of its O-ring to make sure the strobe stays waterproof. There's no underwater photographer who enjoys doing that. It takes time, it's such a pain. Well, one thing I like about my Retra Flash Pro is that the O-ring maintenance is quite straightforward. Basically, you unscrew the cover, you take it out, you swap the batteries, and then you check on your O-rings. Now the good news is you only have to lubricate them every 10 dives, and when you do not have to take them out of their groove, meaning you don't run the risk of kinking them in doing so. So they stay in there, you save time, and you simply have to put some lubricant around them, put the cover back, and off you go. Another thing I like about the design of the Retra Flash Pro is the 3 features which make it quite unlikely that some water can get in and damage the strobe. First, the battery compartment has a double O-ring, meaning a single grain of salt cannot compromise the strobe. Second, in terms of camera connectivity, the Retra Flash Pro only takes fiber optics, meaning there is no risk of corrosion on that side of things. Now, if you are using an electrical SIM cord, you can always get Retra's adapter to transform the electrical signal into an optical one and still be able to trigger the strobe. Last but not least, the Retra Flash Pro has a visual leak alarm. Essentially, there is a leak sensor inside the battery compartment, and if just a little bit of water gets in, this light will start blinking red and blue, and the pilot light here on the other side will go on. These alerts will be pretty hard to miss, and they give you the opportunity to cut the dive short, as soon as it's safe to do so, and go take care of your strobe. Another thing I enjoy about my Retra Flash Pro is that I can pair it with my phone via Bluetooth, and that allows me to do a couple of things. First, using the Retra app, I have access to a few additional settings. For example, I can set the maximum brightness of my pilot light, I can configure whether I want to hear a sound when the strobe is ready to fire again, or I can fine-tune the display of the battery indicator. Second, I can update the firmware of my strobe by myself, there is no need to send it back to the factory for that, and Retra has made use of that capability to deliver enhancements to the strobe since I purchased mine. For example, they have improved the accuracy of the battery indicator, and they have improved the TTL functionality. If ever you need support with your strobe, you can send an email to Retra directly. They are known to reply quickly, and if your problem was, say, a software issue, well, they can probably fix it remotely using that Bluetooth connectivity.